All right, these are notes number 14, factoring to solve quadratics. So we've been reviewing factoring a lot. Leading up to this, we will be solving quadratics by factoring. This is section 12-5 in your book. Please take a look at it. It's page 750. Make sure you've got your name, date, period, title. Essential question is, how do I solve quadratics by factoring? Warm-up should be done. If you didn't get it, then copy it right now and pause if you need to. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get to the notes. Remember, you guys, before you turn in your notes, make sure you've got your 3 questions on the left and a summary. So there's going to be a little bit to write right here. Pause if you want to at any point. And I'll go ahead and read it. And if I go too fast, just pause it and then get caught up, or write the whole thing down and then listen to the explanation. So remember, when we learned about factoring, not every trinomial can be factored, but if one can be factored, we can solve the equation by factoring. So if a quadratic equation can be factored, we can use the zero product property to find the solutions. We are solving, so we want to find solutions. So if a quadratic equation can be factored, remember they don't, not all of them can be factored. So of course, the problems I'm giving you, they can be factored, but just know that not every single quadratic will be able to get factored. Okay, so here's what the zero products property is. It's on page 750. So look in your book, 750, zero product property. Okay, so what that says, it says for any real numbers A and B. So they could be like, I don't know. Well, I don't want to say what numbers they are, but they could be any real numbers. If A times B equals 0, then A could equal 0 or B could equal 0. Just one of them has to equal 0 for this product to equal 0. So like, let's say A is 0, but B is 5. Well, 0 times 5 is 0. Or if A is like -2, but B is 0, you multiply and it equals 0. So A equals 0 or B equals 0. So this is the property that allows us to solve quadratics by factoring. It's very important. So just remember, it's the zero product property, because you set it equal to 0 and we have a product, which means multiplication. So here's an example. It says, and this is already factored, just like we've been reviewing factoring, so it's already in a factored form. X plus 3 times x plus 2. If that equals 0, then you set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So you kind of see how I split it into the 2 parts. So if you have it factored and it has to be equal to 0, you can set x plus 3 equal to 0 and then x plus 2 equal to 0, and you're basically solving each little equation. So to get x by itself, I didn't show the work, but you subtract 3 to both sides, so x would equal -3. And then here you would subtract 2 to both sides and x equals -2. Real quick, I want to just add to that these are the x-intercepts. Remember, that's what the solutions are. That's where the parabola crosses the x-axis at -3, 0 and at -2, 0. And then throughout the notes, I'm going to show you another way to put your answer, like a different way to write it, because that's how Math Excel wants it. But I do just want to remind you guys, let's see. Just in general, I'm not going to try to graph this real quick, but just in general, you guys know, like, let's see, -3, -2. Let's just say it kind of looks like that. The graph passes through the x-axis at those 2 points. I know that's not a good graph. You don't have to draw that, but you can always look at Desmos just to remind yourself what x-intercepts are. It's where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Those are the x-intercepts. So they can be written as an ordered pair. Y would equal 0, x is -3, y is 0, x is -2, y is 0. Or you can just write it as like x equals -3 and x equals -2. And like I said, Math Excel wants you to type your answer in a very specific way, But in general, we can write our answer several different ways. Okay, so I'm giving you guys some of the easier problems first, the ones that are already factored out. So here is the next part. What are the solutions of each equation? It's already factored though. What you need to do is make sure you have it set each factor equal to 0 and then solve. So I'm going to switch to pencil. I'm going to move this too. So I'm basically doing exactly what that example is. I've already got the quadratic factored. Some of your problems will be like this. And all you have to do is set each one equal to 0. So I'll go ahead and set it up first, and then I'll put some color to show you. So I set each factor equal to 0, and then I solve. So just like I did up here, I set each one equal to 0. And I just have to now isolate the variable, get x alone. All right, so here it's x plus 1 equals 0. I get the x alone by doing the inverse operation, so I subtract 1 to both sides. The 1's cancel. X equals 0 minus 1 is negative 1. I'm going to circle that, but I'm going to show you guys another way to write your answer once I'm done. So that's like half of the answer. This one has 2 solutions. Remember, a quadratic could have 2 solutions, 1 solution, or no real number solutions. Here we have x minus 5. I do the inverse operation, which is addition. I add 5 to both sides of the equals. 0 plus 5 is 5. So those are my 2 solutions. So MathExcel will have you write it. It says something like use a comma to separate your answers. I don't think the order matters, but if it ever does, you always go from least to greatest. So negative 1 comma 5. And then later in MathExcel, it will ask you to write your answer as a solution set, and it'll have braces around. They're not parentheses, they have that extra little thing that pokes out. That's how you write a set of numbers. So it'll just want you to still write it. It'll have those symbols for you. You just have to put the 2 numbers inside with a comma. So it doesn't mean it's negative 1 through negative 5. It is this specific number, negative 1 is a solution and 5 is a solution. Okay, so when you get to the MathExcel, you'll see what I mean. So you just have to put the 2 solutions in MathExcel, separate with a comma. All right, so number 2, it's already factored and set equal to 0. So I just have to now put each factor, 2x plus 3 equals 0, and then x minus 4 equal to 0. So I basically just separate it. If either one of those equals 0, 0 times whatever, anything else is going to equal 0. That's the zero product property. So it's a little more work now to get x by itself on this problem. It's a 2-step equation. Use the inverse operation. You always add or subtract first. So I minus 3 to both sides. And then I get 2x equals negative 3. And then use division to get the x alone, divide by 2. It should be okay to keep it as a fraction, but feel free to convert it to a decimal. It would be negative 1.5. I don't think MathExcel will want a mixed number, but if you put it as an improper fraction, 3 over 2, it would be fine. Let me try to write that right here. X equals negative 3 over 2. Or like I said, you could use a calculator and divide it, you get 1.5. Okay, and then the other one, that's easy. You can even solve these mentally once you get the hang of it. Add 4 to both sides, x equals 4. So those are the those are the 2 solutions, but MathExcel will want you to write it like this, negative 3 over 2, comma 4. Those are the 2 solutions. Those are the 2 x-intercepts. The parabola crosses the x-axis at negative 3 over 2 or negative 1.5 and at 4. You guys, if you want to try it, you can also graph these on Desmos. You just have to substitute y for 0, put y equals, and then you can even just type it how it is factored out. 2x plus 3, and then x minus 4. Give it a try real quick. Go on your Chromebook. Just go to desmos.com and graph it and see if I'm right. See if it if that parabola crosses the x-axis at those 2 points. It really helps you understand what we're doing a little bit better. So go to Desmos. Oh, you can't even see what I'm writing. Sorry. There. Go to desmos.com and try to graph that. So just remember, in Desmos, you can't have it set equal to 0. It doesn't really do that right. But if you substitute the 0 for a y equals, and then the 2x plus 3 times x minus 4, make sure you've got parentheses, then that should work. So give that a try. See if it does have those x-intercepts at negative 3 over 2, comma 0, and at 4, comma 0. All right, so anyways, enough of that. I'm just trying to help you guys see how it's all connected. Now let's try factoring first and then solving. So those ones were factored for you. Now we're going to go ahead and factor and then solve. Ooh, and we have a trinomial that has a coefficient in front of the squared term. So copy those down, and then we will, I'll help you guys out with them. All right, so let's go ahead and set this up to factor and solve. It is very important you make sure before you start trying to factor that your equation is set equal to 0. Also, real quick, I want to point out that number 3, 4, 5, and the ones above, they're called equations because there's an equals sign. These are equations because there's equals. If you look back up at the warm-up problems, those aren't equations. These are just trinomials. It's not equal to anything. So it's just a small little thing, but I do want you guys to see the difference that in our warm-up, we factored these trinomials, but they're not equations. And then here, we do have equations. We have that they are equal to 0. All right, so let's go ahead and set it up. So since they're set equal to 0, I don't have to add or subtract or do anything at first. And once I set up the 2 sets of parentheses, I do keep that equal to 0 part. That's really important. So now we've been reviewing factoring. I hope you're remembering how to do it. We look at the last number and we think, let me see. Remember, questions go on the left, but I'm just going to write a little note here. What times what equals to negative 14? But then those two same numbers have to combine or add to give negative 5. So in order to multiply to get negative 14, of course, one of them has to be negative. Thinking of the numbers, I know 1 times 14 is 14 and 2 times 7 is 14. This is looking more like 2 and 7, and one of them has to be negative. Looking at my answer here, 2 plus 7, I think the bigger value has to be negative so that I get negative 5. So I'm going to try that, negative 7. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. 2 plus negative 7 is negative 5. So those are the numbers I put in here. M plus 2, and then M minus 7. So that's not the answer. That's just factored and set equal to 0. I'm basically now where I was at up here. So from here, I need to set each factor equal to 0. I'm going to do that one and this one. And I'm going to show you that you can just solve these simple ones mentally. You don't have to show your work. If m plus 2 equals 0 and m minus 7 equals 0, I can just think mentally, what is that going to equal when I get the variable alone? Basically think, what do I have to do to both sides? And then you'd be adding it to 0 on this side. So I had minus 2, m equals negative 2. Here I would add 7 to both sides, add 7. They cancel here, 0 plus 7, m equals 7. So if we're like doing our work by hand on paper, this is fine. I would just say circle your answer. But for Math Excel, I want you to remember to write it with a comma in between. So you would write negative 2, comma 7, meaning that those are the two numbers that are solutions. They're the intercepts. Notice that it's not an x-intercept in this case, but they're the intercepts if you were to graph it. All right. So negative 2 and 7. All right, so same thing on the next one. Set it up. It's equal to 0. We're good to go. I have to think, and I'm not going to write it down because now I don't have space. But we can always do this mentally. What times what is negative 20? So that tells me I have a positive and a negative. So what times what is negative 20, but adds to give positive 1. There's an invisible 1. So that makes me think of 5 and 4. And I have a variable of p, so I'm going to put the p in. So if I have a positive 1, my 5 has to have the positive sign, and the 4 has to have the negative. So 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. Add 5 and negative 4, you get positive 1. So that's how I know those are the 2 correct numbers. All right, now I just go ahead and solve, set each equal to 0, p plus 5 equals 0, and p minus 4 equals 0. So I'm making 2 small equations using that zero product property. Then I just have to isolate the variable. So here I'm going to do it mentally, subtract 5 from both sides. P equals negative 5. And then here, add 4 to both sides. P equals 4. My answer I'll write with parentheses, negative 5, comma 4. And that's pretty much it. All right, so moving on to number 5. If you're a little bit behind, pause. Make sure you're paying attention for number 5. It's different because we have that coefficient in front of the a squared. So I'm going to start this one off. Let's see if you can work along with me and maybe beat me. If you want to pause and see if you can get it, that would be a really good idea. See if you can fill in the x, get the side numbers. See if you can follow as many steps as you can. Remember that it is going to be equal to 0. All right, so remember, to get the top value, it's 2 times 18, which is 36, and it's positive. Positive 2, positive 18, so positive 36, but it's negative 15 on the bottom, which is kind of weird. But then I was thinking, oh yeah, a negative times a negative would make a positive, and then you add them together to get a negative. So my variable is a. I can start setting up here, and I know they're both going to be minuses. I just have to find the 2 values. So I'm thinking, what times what is 36? Since they're both negatives, they have the same sign. You add to get 15. So what times what is 36? I know 6 times 6, but that would add to give 12. I know 2 times 18 is 36, but that would add to give 20. So I have to think, what else multiplies to give 36? So I know 12 times 3 is 36, and that does add to give 15. So you just have to keep thinking through all your factors. You could go in order. I think you can see this. 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, and then you get to your factor pair that does work. And I'm saying it's in order because I'm going from 1, 2, 3, and it may be 4 times 9, but that one, 4 times, what did I just say? Yeah, that wouldn't add up. That would be 13. So anyways, that's my correct pair, negative 12 and negative 3. And then remember that we have to make that into a fraction. We've been reviewing this. I hope you kind of remember. Remember, what do we have to divide them by? What do we put on the bottom? The coefficient, that number. So divide them both by 2. If you can divide it, then divide. If you can reduce the fraction, reduce it. So 12 over 2 would be 6. It just straight divides. So this would be a minus 6. And here, 3 over 2, I can't divide it. I can't reduce it. In that case, the 2 goes in front of the a as a coefficient. So that would be 2a, 2a minus 3. Don't forget the equals 0 part. And that's it. We factored it. But we're not done solving. So that's, again, the difference between having an equation set equal to 0 when we're solving. We're doing more than just factoring. I do want to check and make sure I factored this correctly. So I would think, just real quick, a times 2a is 2a squared. That one checks out. Negative 6 times negative 3, that is positive 18. And then if I had outside and inside, I want to just compare those ones. That would be negative 12a and negative 3a. Negative 12a plus negative 3a is negative 15. So you can do a quick little check mentally. I didn't even write anything down, but I checked and made sure that I did factor correctly. So from here, I'm going to get the 2 factors and set them both equal to 0. So I'm going to do a minus 6. And if I'm moving too quick, just pause. Sometimes I start talking fast. And then I'm going to do 2a minus 3 equal to 0. So I set each factor equal to 0. I'm trying to color coordinate them so you guys can see. Okay, and then if you can solve mentally, solve mentally. If you need to show work, show the work. Add 6 to both sides. A equals 0 plus 6 is 6. Here, I would add 3 and then divide by 2. So if you can do that mentally, like I was just thinking, add 3, 0 plus 3 is 3. Divide by 2, so it's 3 over 2. You can do as much mentally as you can, just don't make a mistake. So those are the two answers. And remember, in Math Excel, it'll probably want you to separate them with a comma, but I ran out of space, so I'm just going to circle them. Okay, so pause if you need to. I'm going to actually turn the page. We have another page. All right, notes number 14 continued. So these are just a few examples. Oh, it's only one, and then you'll try some. Just one example real quick to show you, like sometimes you have to set the quadratic equation equal to 0 first. So if you look at this equation, it's not equal to 0. So I wrote steps down. These are the steps that you can kind of use on the other problems. It's always nice to have steps. So I made some steps for you. So you always have to make sure that your equation is set equal to 0. All the other ones on the first page are. On this page, you're going to get 1 and then one more down here that you can't see it that is not equal to 0. So I'll show you guys again how to set it equal to 0. Step 2 is to factor because we are solving by factoring. Step 3, we will use the zero product property to set each factor equal to 0 and then solve and get you could get 1, 2, or no solutions. Mostly we've been seeing 2 solutions. All right, so the first step, pause if you need to. I know I kind of talked fast. I need to get rid of that minus 49. So I need to get rid of that, bring it over here. Notice that it's not a trinomial over here. So all I have to do is do the inverse operation, which is add 49 to both sides. I want to keep this equation in standard form. So I want it to go from highest exponent first to the next exponent, which is x to the first, and then to the constant, just whole number. Negative 49 plus 49 equals 0. So that's what we get. Okay, so now I've got this factored. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my parentheses now and try to, wait, I don't know what I just said. So anyways, sorry. This is in standard form. Now we're going to get it factored. I think I said something wrong. Okay, so now we're going to get it factored. I have to think, okay, it's an x variable. I have to think what times what is 49 that adds to give 14. Some of you might actually recognize it. This is a trinomial square. It's x plus 7 squared. But for what we're doing right now, I just want to show you that you can use factoring it where you write it down 2 times and it's actually going to work out. So anyways, it's 7 times 7 is 49. 7 plus 7 is 14. So it's the same number. I can actually show you guys. We don't have that much time though. I'll just show you real quick. Using the zero product property, you would set each x plus 7 equal to 0. And you end up getting, for both of them, you minus 7 to both sides, you get x equals negative 7. And here, minus 7 to both sides, you get x equals negative 7. So you get the same answer. You don't have to write it twice. This is one of those ones where it's one solution. So the answer is, well, I don't need to rewrite it. I'll just circle one of them. The answer is x equals 7. Or sorry, x equals negative 7. All right, so that's what you have to do when the equation is not set equal to 0. Add or subtract whatever you have to do to make this equation now equal to 0 and in standard form so that you can then factor and use the zero product property. All right, now you try. We'll go over these probably at our next class. So you try it. Number 6 is already factored and set equal to 0. You just have to use the zero product property like we did right there. Number 7 is a trinomial that you do have to factor and then solve using the zero product property. Number 8, it is not equal to 0, so you have to set it equal to 0. This has a coefficient in front of the h squared, so then you'll have to use the x. All right, so give those problems a try, see how you do. I think all of them you should be getting 2 solutions. You can always check on Desmos, look at the graphs, and it should match up. Just remember to put in an X for your variables when you type the equations and have it set equal to Y, not 0. You have to set that to 0 first and then put in a Y. All right, good luck. Make sure you guys do your 3 questions on the left and a summary before you turn these into Google Classroom.